Hey, good morning. It's been a crazy morning. Absolutely crazy. I woke up at 5 because my sinuses were plugged up. Had to drink some fluids and try to get them clear. Then I had borrowed my son's truck so I could go to uh, get some lumber. We tore up the old porch. It was in really bad shape. We tore it up and we had to get some lumber to finish putting it together. And I grabbed the keys for the truck and didn't grab the keys to the office. So I got to the office and realized I don't have the keys to get into the office. So I turn around, drive back, go grab the keys, my keys, and then uh, I leave my son's keys in the truck and the door locks after I close it. And so I had to take my wife's car and race to get back here. And I just barely made it and I'm a little bit late, but that's why it's been like crazy. I don't know, maybe some opposition from the forces of darkness, because what I wanted to talk about today was the whole issue of the big pharma, food industry, all of the things that we have that are really causing people to be sick. I personally believe that much of this dysfunction is orchestrated. It's not just caused by the fact that ordinary human beings are greedy. We're all a bit self-centered, but I think a lot of money has been poured into keeping us sick and keeping us so we can't think clearly. I mean, I struggle with this in my own household because, my kids have all gotten addicted to junk food, and there's all this like sugar and chemicals and bad stuff in most food. And you go to the grocery store and you read labels, and it's amazing, what's out there. And also, then you have the genetically modified organisms. You have the glycophosphates that are being used as weed killers, which disrupt the friendly flora in the gut and are probably causing a lot of health problems. And yet they're heralded as something that's supposed to be like good for mankind. I mean, Monsanto has a track record of putting out all kinds of hazardous chemicals and products, Agent Orange, et cetera. And, most GMOs are actually designed to allow crops to tolerate being doused with heavy doses of glycophosphate weed killers and survive. And so it's not about making food better. It's not about anything other than the fact that it allows them to sell lots of Roundup and patents genes. And I'm hoping that we're going to see more and more people, rising up and wanting, things different, wanting foods that are organically grown. I mean, one of the big problems we have is that junk food is cheap, and junk food is cheap because this, big scale agriculture that uses these chemicals is subsidized by the government, which is really insane. Which means that the wheat and the corn and the soybeans and so forth are cheap because the government, artificially lowers the price. Then that all gets fed to animals. So feedlot beef becomes cheaper than grass-fed beef, and so the government subsidizes chemical agriculture, and then on the other hand, makes farmers pay extra money to be certified organic, driving the price of certified organic products up. I personally think the certified organic program was run much better when it was run by independent agencies, and I don't think that more government is the answer. In fact, I think that we need to get away from thinking that government agencies are going to solve the problems. I saw a very, very good interview that Stefan Molyneux did, and I forget the name of the person he was interviewing, but they were explaining that all the FDA regulations that were put in that were supposed to be, to protect the public, they wind up protecting the pharmaceutical companies is what it winds up doing. And meanwhile, all kinds of information that could have saved lives and helped people got suppressed because of the FDA. The FDA has, for a long time, attacked vitamins. They attacked herbs. They've because you think about the fact that herbs are relatively cheap. They're medicine to the people, but you see all this mainstream media and everything all saying herbs are dangerous, blah blah blah. Every time I look at major supposedly authoritative sources, even if there's a lot of research that's been on an herb, they always say something like, well, we need more research, the safety isn't quite there, blah 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 blah, all like saying pharmaceutical drugs are good and herbs are bad. And one of the examples that they used of this problem is the research on folic acid preventing birth defects has been around for about 30 years. But the pharmaceutical companies that make vitamins, by the way, vitamins are made by pharmaceutical companies. Vitamins were discovered by pharmaceutical companies, but the companies that made it could not, put out the research that folic acid could prevent birth defects because the FDA wouldn't allow it, because it would have made a quote unquote drug claim for folic acid. And of course, to do a drug claim takes billions and billions of dollars. And so the way the FDA has been set up, it actually inhibits useful information on nutrition, on herbs, and even, potentially useful pharmaceutical drugs from getting out there. And it also inhibits money going to research conditions that don't affect millions and millions of people. So, there are illnesses that maybe only affect a few thousand people, but they're not worth studying because you come up with something that will help those diseases, and you have to spend billions and billions. How do you make the money back? These are huge social problems, and I've long understood that it's going to take some radical change in society to really help people be healthy. Because if things were allowed to run the way they ought to, locally grown organic produce ought to be less expensive than big agriculture chemical produce. It really ought to be that way, because you don't need as much machinery. You don't need to spend a bunch of money on chemicals. You don't need to ship it so far. But because of the way things are set up, it really, really, makes it difficult for people who are, struggling financially. Because I understand this now that I'm married and I got some kids. Money's tighter and so forth. And you go and look at this, and this junk food is cheap. It's cheap. It's very, very inexpensive. And good food is much more expensive. And how do you justify that? So what we have here is not just a problem with people, not knowing what's right or whatever. It's an economic, social problem and political problem. And we, are going to need to solve this to really help Americans be healthy again, because you cannot eat that crap and be healthy. I mean, okay, so I gave in because they begged for it, and got, my wife got some sugar sweetened breakfast cereal for the kids, some big gigantic bag of this stuff, $3, so, two of my kids brought home, they ate half of the bag, in one day, and both of them were throwing up that night. I mean, so I just took the stuff, said, forget it. I'm not going to do this. It's really, really a major problem. So, got a few questions coming in. So I like this with some, discussion. So appreciate. Cash says, Stephen, have you listened to Elon Musk's interview on John Reagan's broadcast? And I haven't. Maybe you can send me a link to it or something, and I'll look at it. When you buy produce from the local farmer's market, Sherry says, what do you recommend washing it in? I've used the Sunshine Concentrate from Nature Sunshine, but I've also used the Dr. Bronner's super mild baby soap, unscented. And all I do is I get a tub and let the produce in it, or a bowl, and I put just like 3 or 4 drops of the soap in there and just mix it around and then rinse it really good. Because that at least gets some, of the chemicals off and so forth. And a lot of local, growers are not likely to use as heavy spraying or whatnot. So you're not likely to get as much of the pesticides as you get with a great big commercial grower. Okay. And plus the produce is really fresher. Someone says, how do you not lose hope and feel defeated when you know all this, plus so many other things going on in technological issues as well? How do you personally not live in fear, destruction of Earth, etc.? I don't actually. I guess the reason why, and I don't live in fear, is because I actually believe very strongly in Supreme Being, in God, and I've had a very good personal relationship with God for many years. Someone on my last holistic perspective thing chastised me for quote unquote Bible thumping, and I don't think I Bible thump. I sometimes quote a scripture, but I quote a lot of other sources too. But right now, I actually have more hope than I have had in ages that we are going to turn this around. There are some, and from my perspective, there are some really, really good things going on in the world that give me great hope that this is going to get turned around. And so I've been praying for a long time for it to be turned around, and I've been praying for the evil to be brought to light and exposed, because the best way to cure these problems is to awaken people, so that people start seeing the truth and seeing what's going on. I'm very, very hopeful, especially since I discovered the QAnon phenomenon, and because I don't know if any of you have seen anything on QAnon, but it matches so well with what I understand of what's been going on behind the scenes with people who are manipulating things, and it definitely has a definite ring of truth about it. I did a series of 4 webinars kind of introducing my whole experience and so on this, which you can see on the YouTube channel. But there's big issues going on, because what we've had for a long time is some very, very evil people. Not just, we're not talking about people, the ordinary businessman, okay, isn't some greedy, awful person. Everybody wants to make a living. Everybody wants to be able to have, make money, have either a good job or a good business. But to do this in ordinary life, in an unmanipulated economy, in an unmanipulated system, you have to please customers. You have to give people things that they want, that they enjoy, that benefit other people. That's the way normal business works. But when you get certain very, very evil criminal people at the top who are manipulating the money system and manipulating government, and those people don't care about providing good products and services. They're doing this through, manipulation and trying to keep the masses of people squashed and downtrodden. This is, by the way, people call this getting red pilled. When you see that this is going on, it's very, very frustrating to really learn how bad things really are. But on the other hand, there's major change coming on the horizon, and major things that are hopefully going to break that will really, really start cleaning this up and start making things better for everybody. QAnon. If you go to my little playlist I did, I explain about my view of what I learned about the prophets who predicted about what's going on right now with the Trump administration. Why? Hey, let me just ask you this question. Why does the mainstream media constantly attack everything that Donald Trump does? Everything that Donald Trump does. I mean, I was not happy with the previous Clinton administration, with the Bush administration, with the Obama administration. A lot of the things that were going on in those administrations I thought were really crappy. There were a lot of things that were really corrupt. You never saw that get reported. You never saw those people get under attack. And the reason why is because they were controlled. They were people who the real people in power behind the throne had strings on that they could manipulate and control them. You know that if you research Project Mockingbird, the CIA basically started infiltrating the major news media, and they use a technique that actually Lenin started, which is called controlled opposition. You basically fund both sides of the argument, but manipulate both sides of the argument in order to get people fighting and contending, while meanwhile you're doing the dog and pony show in the front, and nobody's seeing what's really going on behind the scenes. Okay, it's there was a movie about that called Wag the Dog, where you set up the smoke screen of the news story to get people's attention focused on the thing that you want them to be focused on, so you can do the little shuffle, like the little magic trick behind the scenes. So the reason is he's not one of those insiders. He's not controlled by them, and actually he's taking them down. And there are, like, right now 50,000 sealed indictments. Sealed indictments are used to bring down organized criminal organizations, and there's usually only 1,000 to 2,000 issued in any one year. There have been 50,000 issued in this year, and the reason they were able to do this, John F. Kennedy learned what was going on, and he announced in a speech that what was going on, and said, "I'm going to expose it." A week later, he was assassinated. So people who have attempted to change the system have met with failure. But what's happened, if you look at the QAnon phenomenon, is it appears that there were some really good people in government. And once they got the ability to basically spy on everybody's cell phone conversations, text messages, and everything else like that, that was set up so that they could manipulate and control all of us. But what happened is certain people in the government who were good and who really loved America and loved America's freedom got into that system, and then got all the information that they needed to start basically working on prosecuting all these people by pulling out the evidence of what they've been doing, from their emails and everything behind the scenes. And that's really what's going on right now. And so I have a lot of hope. There's some really amazing things happening right now. And if you want to learn a little bit more about it, you can watch that. Yeah, I use the sunshine concentrate the same way I use the Doc Bronner's baby soap, just a few drops, just like three or four drops, depending on the size of the container, anywhere from 2 to 4 drops, just a little bit, just to it doesn't leave any kind of a soapy taste or whatever on the produce. You just swish it around a little bit and then rinse it off really good. And it's a great way. I do that with especially things like strawberries and fruit and that sort of thing. So, any other questions or comments? But one of the things that why I want to talk about this is because one of the things that we all need to do is, Nature's Fresh will work too. You need maybe probably a quarter of a teaspoon of Nature's Fresh. It has a little bit of soap in it and it has some enzymes, and it would probably clean the fruit really well itself, but you would need just a little bit more. Okay, if we Google Project Mockingbird with somebody knocking on our door. I figured that I have been under surveillance for a long, long time because I became friends with a former CIA agent who I'd had some spiritual experiences that had told me some of the stuff that was going on, but I had no physical evidence. I had nothing I could point to and say other than what had been shown to me spiritually. So I never said much about it. I just observed. And then when I got in touch with this guy, and it was kind of an interesting story how I got in touch with him in the first place, and we became friends. And for 8 years, we talked a lot, and he educated me really about a lot of what's going on behind the scenes, because what he said is that the CIA is basically works for the people who are pushing for a one world government, and basically they are trying to basically control and manipulate the entire planet, and they're primarily funded by drug money. So the CIA is the biggest drug dealer in the world, and that's how they get the money for their operations. They take down governments that won't go along with things, and they knew that America was a problem, so they actually set about in the late 50s, early 60s, to basically start doing things to destroy America, to bankrupt the country, to weaken the American people, and basically, knock this country out, because it was the biggest obstacle to them taking power. And later I found other sources and so forth, and now there's a whole lot about that. But what I'm trying to tell you is that one of the ways they want to take us down is by ruining our health. And Gary explained this to me. He said, in a combat situation, he says the enemy realizes that is it better to kill someone or better to wound them? And he said it's actually better to wound them, because he says if you wound them, then other soldiers or people have to divert their attention from the battle in order to take care of the wounded soldier. Or if he's dead, the other ones keep fighting. He said, so by doing things that deliberately make people sick, he says, think about, a family where the kid gets damaged by vaccines. All right. That family is forever hampered, crippled, whatever, by that major illness. So what they want to do is keep people so preoccupied, struggling financially, struggling whatever, and struggling with their health, that nobody's going to notice, what's going on behind the dog and pony show. And also they can get like everybody fighting amongst themselves, again, as a diversion to keep people from seeing the real evil that's going on. Okay, back to the question. what about thought about local or organically grown produce containing beneficial bacteria, and when washed it removes the bacteria that could potentially good for our intestines and immunity? That is a good point. I don't ever like peel, or I wash carrots when I pick them out from the garden, but I don't try to scrub them clean, because on the surface of the carrot or the root vegetable from the garden is a little bit of bacterial biofilm, and that is actually good for us. And in fact, that's the topic of my Sunshine Sharing newsletter that's coming up this month, is about the fact that we need to stop worrying so much about germs and start, learning how to build a healthy immune system. And one of the things that I talk about is that there's a inverse relationship between infectious diseases, the rate of infectious diseases in a culture, and the rate of allergies, asthma, eczema, and autoimmune disorders. So as the rate of people getting sick from infectious diseases has declined, the rate of people having these immune dysfunction diseases, which is what allergies and autoimmune are, but that's also involves things like eczema and asthma, have increased in the same rate. And part of this is that we're not getting exposed to enough dirt. We need a little bit of dirt in our lives, because dirt is teeming with microbes, and that little bit of dirt actually helps build up the microbiome in our body. Plus, and that's one theory, it's called the hygiene hypothesis. The other theory is called, I just forgot the name, it slipped my mind. But basically, it's the idea that fighting off minor infections, colds, childhood diseases, having the chicken pox or whatever, trains your immune system how to fight an infection. And when your system is dysregulated, it doesn't know how to properly deal with things. So yeah, I think that it's what I said about like 1/4 teaspoon of Nature's Fresh, not a whole teaspoon. Like you don't need very much, like just 1/4 teaspoon, maybe a half a teaspoon, to just swish around in the water for a little bit. Nature's Fresh contains a little bit of soap, a little bit of a natural soap, and along with the enzymes. And of course, the nice thing about the enzymes is the enzymes break down organic compounds, so they might actually help to break down some of the pesticides as well, if there's any kind of organic structure to that molecule. Strong smelling urine and cracked heels. Cracked heels could be a couple of things. And well, that sounds to me like you're not, like the person's not hydrated very well. I mean, there are several things that could cause strong smelling urine. Certain vitamins make urine smell strong. Asparagus makes urine still smell strong. But if your urine is very dark colored, okay, it has a strong odor, it means you're not drinking enough water. Water dilutes toxins. And so if you're partially dehydrated, your kidneys have to work overly hard to filter toxins out through the small amount of urine they're able to excrete. And the cracked heels can also be like a sign of dehydration, or a lack of good fats. I mean, when my heels have gotten a little bit dry, besides drinking more water, I've just rubbed a little bit of coconut oil on them to kind of rehydrate the skin a little bit and help the skin be better. But my first guess with somebody who's having very dark, strong smelling urine is that they just aren't drinking enough water. Anybody else have any questions or comments? So I know that I'm really happy that Canada has asked me to do a class after their convention, and I'm going to do a class on nutrition and eating healthy. because I don't believe that herbs and supplements can make up for an unhealthy diet and lifestyle. People need to be educated. They need to understand the problems with GMOs. They need to understand the problems with the refined carbohydrates. There's an interesting book. I think it's called Empty Harvest, but I don't remember the author's name. But in it, he talks about the origins of the FDA. Originally, they formed this to be like what would be the Pure Food Bureau, okay? And the guy who was heading it, a man by the name of Wiley, his last name, I don't remember his first name, was setting out to prove that white flour and refined sugar were harmful to human health, because he wanted to ban them. And he also wanted to take down Coca-Cola with their, because he felt Coca-Cola was actually harmful to human health. Well, the major food manufacturers launched a smear campaign against him, and basically went on the attack through the media. This is nothing new, okay? Went on the attack through the media that he was incompetent, that he was an idiot, blah, 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 blah. And then they spent money and lobbied in Washington to get him replaced with someone who said, literally, someone who said the second head of what is now the FDA said, nutrition has nothing to do with human health. He actually publicly stated nutrition has nothing to do with human health. And so ever since that time, FDA has been a revolving door. The people who had FDA work in the major food companies and the major pharmaceutical companies, and they rotate in and out of, from being employed in the corporate world to being employed in the FDA. So basically you have the fox guarding the hen house. And that's why I think anytime you think, well, we'll just get more government, well, the people with money will always put in much money and try to get people in government that are corrupt. So it's better to do what the founding fathers said, limit the size of government. And then you can have, like we used to have, independent companies that certified organic food, and they have a vested interest in making sure that their certification means something. Because if they don't do their due diligence to make sure that the food is grown to the specifications that they say it is, then they could lose their credibility and their whole business is down the tubes. Whereas the FDA doesn't have to worry about that. If you grease enough palms at the FDA, you can get aspartame through. You can GMOs were approved without any research, over objections of actual officials within the FDA, because you just have to grease enough palms to get it to happen. Okay, back to some questions. Oh, Mark Anderson is the author of Empty Harvest. Thank you very much. Any supplement protocols you recommend for gout? Oh, those are not the same person. Okay, well, I gave you a good answer for both of them. Yeah, I would say that one of the best things that you could do for gout is probably to drink nettle tea, the stinging nettle leaf. You can also use black cherry juice, which is something Bernard Jensen used to make as a concentrated black cherry concentrate. I don't know if health food stores still carry that or not, but that was really good too. But I would just say that the number one remedy I would try for gout is nettle, and I would make it a quart of the tea and drink that every day, in addition to lowering protein and sugar. Yeah, you also want to, when you have gout, eat less protein, because your body's having a hard time handling it. And also, Shelby said, getting rid of sugar is a good idea too. Cash says, yes, I just started no caffeine, no added sugar. And although I'm feeling a bit of a crash, it feels like I'm slowly rebuilding after it. Yep, that's the way it is, since the oil companies have enough grease to cover every palm in America. I think oil, the technology that uses oil for energy, would have long ago started phasing out with new technology, was it not for the again, big money interests keeping us dependent on oil, and suppressing technologies that yet get a better gas mileage and so forth. I don't actually believe in the global warming scenario about the CO2. I've looked at the research, and it is all of the models that have been used to predict global climate change are inaccurate. They don't actually work. The climate has not changed in the way they predicted it. And there's evidence that there have been much higher levels of CO2 in the past in Earth's history, and that it actually promotes more plant life. I am concerned about other pollutants that come out with, burning fuels and trying to keep air clean and reducing automobile emissions and everything, all of which is good technology. But I don't think CO2 is a pollutant. There's too many other factors. And like I said last time, if you look at the electric universe model, the most accurate predictor of temperature is the amount of electrical activity coming off of the sun. And that actually seems to be highly predictive and highly accurate, where the other is not. And from my study of it, the global warming scenario was actually concocted as a means of political manipulation. Anyway, but one of the reasons why the founding fathers argued against a strong central government and also argued for separation of powers both vertically and horizontally was actually because that inhibits the ability of people to corrupt the government. Because what we've done in this country that was been a big mistake is we've been putting more and more power to the federal government, taking it away from the states. And we've also been giving more and more power to the executive branch, and reducing the power of the court system and the power of the legislature. And the executive branch is only supposed to be able to enforce the law. They're not supposed to be able to judge people who break the law, and they're not supposed to be able to make laws. But when you create organizations like the FDA makes regulations, enforces regulations, and punishes people, combining all three powers into one. And that is where you get the ability for people to start greasing the wheels of government and manipulating it. If you keep the separation of powers, it's very hard to manipulate that many people, especially if you also are divided with local governments taking care of what's local, state governments taking care of what's state, and the federal government only managing a very limited amount of things. Then it helps inhibit power. Meniere's disease, that is really tricky. I've looked at Meniere's disease. I haven't actually had a lot of experience working with it. There are several things that cause ringing in the ears, and I'm going to tell you what I know about that. Besides the acute infections, which is of course not what Meniere's is, you have if you get any little bit of hardening of the arteries, arterial atherosclerosis going into the blood vessels that are going into the ear, that actually does create a rushing sound in the ear. And so you need to work on circulation if that's the case. The most common reason why people get the chronic ringing in the ears, though, is best explained by something I learned about muscles. When a muscle contracts, it expends energy. As it rebuilds its energy charge, it relaxes. So when a muscle is exhausted, it cramps, it spasms. So all of your like tense muscles and everything are actually tired muscles that need to be stretched and relaxed in order to be able to rebuild an energy charge so they can be relaxed again. Well, in between your eardrum and your inner ear are three tiny bones, the hammer, anvil, and stirrup. And they transfer the vibration from your eardrum into the inner ear. And they have little teeny muscles on them. So when you have loud noises, such as operating heavy machinery, being at rock concerts, turning up the music really loud, any kind of thing like that, in order to protect the inner ear against the loud vibrations, the little teeny muscles in the inner ear contract. They because if they're tense, right, tight, then less vibration travels in through the ear. Well, what happens is over time, exposure to chronic loud noises causes those muscles to chronically spasm. And when a muscle is tight, it also tends to tremor just a little bit. And that little teeny shake in those tight muscles causes the ringing in the ears. A similar thing happens in your eyes because your nearsightedness and farsightedness is actually caused by spasms and problems with the muscles in your eyes. Like with me, spending so much time doing close-up work, I wind up needing glasses, right? I don't wear them when I'm on this thing because I actually can see the screen better without them. But so the trick would be, helping those tiny little muscles to relax. Now, lobelia in the ears has helped some people. There's a formula called CBG extract in Nature Sunshine. Some people have found putting that in the ears have helped. Matthew Wood says that small doses of bee balm, Monardia, bergamot, have helped cases of ringing in the ears. So you'd have to kind of experiment with what helps it. But the two major things to look at is how's your circulation doing? And if you've been exposed to a lot of loud noises, is getting those muscles to relax again. Warts. I don't know if I can even get it anymore. I'd have to contact my friend. What I have always done for warts is there's this mixture of herbs that I got from a naturopathic friend of mine in Idaho called sea herb. I don't have any right now because I haven't been pushing the clinical thing, but it comes in a little teeny vial, and there's not very much of it, but there's enough of it to take off 4 or 5 warts. It also works on moles and skin cancers too. It's an escharotic salve. And what you do is you take a little teeny bit of that with a toothpick and you put it onto the wart and cover it with a Band-Aid, and you change it every day until the wart develops a white ring around it, or the mole develops a white ring around it, and then you discontinue, and then it will come out, and then you follow that with a healing salve. You can, Kimberly Ballas told me how to make a rather simple escharotic salve for taking off warts by taking and mixing a capsule of Nature Sunshine's Paw Celreg with black salve. With the black salve. So you just take enough black salve to mix all the powders together, and then you use that, a tiny little bit of that, put on the foot and do this. Now, someone just mentioned banana peel. I have heard banana peel works. He also says putting duct tape on it to smother it. But I've also heard of people taking a little piece of banana peel and taping it over the wart and having it take that off as well. But I personally have used escharotics, sea herb for that. Oh, what I recommend for circulation is, as far as if that's what's causing the ringing in the ears, I've typically used an oral chelation formula from Nature Sunshine called Megakel, and had a person do oral chelation to help reduce the amount of plaque on the arteries. There's a and I would also seriously consider, if you've got other signs of really bad circulation, possibly doing intravenous chelation. But other than that, just all the kinds of herbs that enhance circulation, like cayenne pepper and ginger and garlic and those sorts of things, as well as a lot of berries, blackberries, blueberries, whatever. Oh, it's a black salve or a black ointment. Someone said sea herb is still available. It wouldn't touch the bump they have. Oh, well, that's amazing, because if you've got a bump or a wart that sea herb didn't take off, then it probably isn't like viral or abnormal cells. One thing I do recommend, even though I don't use a lot of medical treatments, I actually do think that sometimes you need to go get a medical diagnosis to know what you're dealing with. Because if black salve wouldn't touch it, I'm not sure what it is. Is it a cyst? Is it if it's a cyst, then alternatives would help. Things like red clover, burdock, and that sort of thing. Hawthorn berries. Yeah, hawthorn berries are also really good for circulation as well. I'm talking about a type of salve. They're called escharotics, and they've been around. They're actually really tricky to use, and they can actually cause problems with some people. So you really have to understand what they do and how they work, and watch carefully if you're using them. I always am a little bit nervous. Somebody took a wart off here with sea herb, and the wart went down into the nerve, and it damaged the nerve in their finger as it was coming out. So you do need to be careful with escharotics. But an escharotic salve, the simplest way to make one is just to make a decoction of red clover, burdock, and some other alternative herbs. It helps to have some strong stuff like chaparral and pokeroot in it. And you make that strong decoction, and then you just boil it down until it just basically turns into a tarry paste. And then you add, to make it even stronger, you add a little bit of zinc chloride to it. And there's recipes for this. In fact, there's a whole book I have in my library on recipes for escharotic salves. Samuel Thompson made a very simple one just by taking a decoction of red clover and just boiling it down until it basically turned into a thick paste, and just painted that on things. But Nature Sunshine has a one called black ointment or black salve, and it's a very mild escharotic, but the pawpaw cellreg kills abnormal cells, and so by mixing pawpaw cellreg with it, you get a much stronger action of the drawing or escharotic salve. Wow, they've tried banana peel, they've tried black salve, they've tried thuya, and no luck. Anything internally. Wow, if they've tried all of that, man, that's when I want to see a person in person, because that's when I use my muscle testing and cheat. Because what I do is I take the place that that they've got a problem on their foot, and I put my finger over it and muscle test, and it'll be weak. All right. And then I start taking remedies. I start, handing them remedies to hold, and I keep testing it until I find something that makes that point go strong. And I test whether it's internal or topical. And So when I have a situation where the normal things that I use don't work, that's what I do. I call it fishing. I start fishing for remedies using muscle response testing and see if I can find something that actually will make that spot test strong. And typically, that's how I find what will work. A good iridology camera. I would go look at the International Iridology Practitioners Association's website and see if they have some recommendations. I used to have Alina, but they don't make that anymore, and they've got a whole bunch of different cameras now. I know Miles Lab has a really, really good camera. If you want to spend some money on a camera, there's really nice ones out there. There's also some fairly inexpensive ones that just you just shine in and it takes a picture going to the computer, but they don't have a nice resolution. Oh, can you wear a glove? Yeah, but I'm not actually touching, like I wouldn't actually touch the wart. All you have to do is put your finger like about that far over it. Okay. And it'll test weak. It's like the energy off of it will be bad. And then you could do this. But if you were going to actually touch it, you could wear a glove. But I would just say that you just hold it over where that part is in the foot and do that. I've done this with things all over the body, like a sore on the leg that wouldn't heal or whatever. And I just find where the weak spot is, and then start testing what does it need. And I've been able to find all kinds of things using that very simple system. What about ESIAC? Well, I think ESIAC is a great product. Years ago when I had a recipe for ESIAC, and I did one of my first herb companies that I founded. One of the things we were making is ESIAC in glycerin, and we were selling lots of it. And people were really finding it useful. So we were making it as a glycerite. So I think ESIAC is a really useful formula. It's one of several traditional anti-cancer formulas. I think that those kind of formulas are very, very beneficial for someone who has cancer or cysts or any kind of like toxic accumulation in the body. But I think they have to be used as part of like a holistic protocol that includes dietary change, working on their mental and emotional attitudes, and approaching things very holistic. I don't think that just using one of those things alone would be helpful. I don't know if it would work on a wart. I've never tried it. Okay. Well, we're getting to the end of our time. Really appreciate all of the comments and questions. Like I said, it's a battle. I've been in this fight, if you will, for many, many years. And my particular thing in this fight has been to try to educate people primarily about health, because I feel like if people are so sick and their brains are so messed up with sugar and junk food and chemicals and whatever that they can't think straight, there's not much point in trying to help them in any other way. You've got to get them to start making at least some minor changes to their diet so they can think better. My youngest son has been way off of sugar, and to the point, I mean, he used to want candy all the time. Now he's not wanting candy all the time, and actually is recognizing certain things too sweet. My wife is also getting off of sugar, and so I'm making progress. But it's a battle, to try to educate people about this stuff, because people we're creatures of habit, and a lot of times we have to get really sick before we're willing to actually make the changes. What diet do I recommend? The main thing I teach people about diet is, number one, eliminate refined and processed foods. That includes processed vegetable oils, shortening, margarine, refined sugar, high fructose corn syrup, white flour, white rice, all of the packaged foods that contain chemical ingredients. Eat real food. Eat real, eat the best quality proteins you can find. If you can afford it, go with pastured animals, grass-fed, organic. If you can't, find the best you can. Eat fresh vegetables. Even if you can't afford organic vegetables, just buy vegetables that look as fresh as you possibly can and wash them. And stick primarily to whole, real foods. That's the first change. Okay. I do believe that there are genetic differences that, some people tolerate certain foods and other people don't tolerate those same foods very well. But that's secondary to just getting off of the junk. If people would just get off of the junk, they would feel tons better. Their brain would clear. They would get more in tune with their body, and their body would start telling them what to eat and what not to eat. Because I think that your body tells you what to eat and what not to eat, but when you're loaded down with junk food and refined sugar and all that stuff, your internal mechanisms are so confused that you can't really, you're not in tune with your senses. Your senses are dulled. And so once you get to the point where you are like eating real food, your senses become more attuned to what you need, and your body starts telling you how to eat. Yeah. Oh, so someone said they had a sore pimp that popped out above the wrist and turned into a wart. That's interesting. Well, I like I said, I have taken off warts with syrup and escharotic salves. There are other remedies out there. Oh, yeah. Well, besides eating healthy, the other thing is, get the fluoride out of your. Fluoride dulls your brain, dumbs you down, and try to avoid chemicals. Just try to avoid, use natural personal care products, use natural shampoos, use natural pest care products. Try to just, keep your life clean and eat things as natural as they can. That's my number one advice. That would take care of a lot of people's health problems, just doing those things. It's easier said than done, but believe me, it's really well worth it. It really is. Eat food. Don't eat a lot. Eat mostly vegetables. That's the advice. You do need some protein, but the bulk of your diet should be vegetables. And particularly, I'm not talking about potatoes. We're talking about, lettuce, peas, green beans, turnips, parsnips, chard, mushrooms, peppers, on and on and on and on, but not just, not just potatoes. Okay, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. Sorry I was a little bit late. It's been one crazy day, one crazy weekend. So I'll catch you again in 2 weeks. I'm off to the Nature Sunshine Convention in a couple of days, where I get to introduce a new product that I helped to design, which I'm really looking forward to. And I'll tell you all about it in 2 weeks, as well as all the other product that they're launching at convention that I've also been taking for a month that I really like. And so next time on our Higher Perspective show, I'm going to tell you about these two products that I can't tell you about right now because I can't divulge the information before they're released. So anyway, you have fun, and thanks for joining me. Thanks for being on the program, and I'll catch you again in a couple of weeks. That bag of chips was 5 servings of vegetables. Yep. All right. Goodbye.